Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Michael McQuade Masterclass. In this episode we're going to be focusing around sales, and I really hope you'll find this of amazing value. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
It's a pleasure. Bit of a regular now, aren't you?
Well, yes, becoming that way, yeah.
So let's just get straight into it. What are the key components of a successful sales strategy?
Okay, so I think you've got to have a clear offering. You've got to understand clearly what you're selling, and have clear pricing. And I guess really key to selling is to identify the problem that I guess your target, whoever you're selling to, what's their problem and how do you solve their problem? And I think if you can do that and you have a clear offering as to how that solves their problem, that's a key bit to the sales process.
Yeah, so identifying their problem is key. And I think nowadays we do things more ethically than what, say, I don't want to slag them off, but a second-hand car salesman or an insurance salesman might have done 40 years ago, where they use persuasive techniques and try and coerce people into buying. How do you think that has evolved over the years into today's sales?
I don't know. I guess there's always some persuasion involved in selling, because you're trying to convince somebody to buy something from you. So at a very basic level, you are persuading them to some degree, because you're persuading them to come to you rather than come to somebody else. So there's a lot of persuasion involved, but I think there are, I guess, different ways that you can sell to people, and different persuasion tactics. Some are particularly, or have been particularly, blunt and, let's say, scare tactics, and trying to get people to commit really soon before they're ready to, and being very pushy. I think for me, I've always taken the approach that it's about displaying what your value is and how you help and how you can help them, and sort of making it feel like that when they're ready to make a decision, that you're the only choice, or you should be the only choice for them. And it's kind of just bringing them along that journey with you, to identify what their needs are, and then doing the best job you can of showing how you solve those problems. And even if they aren't ready to make a decision right then, chances are that you'll have left a lasting impression with them, so that when the time is right for them to make a decision, and this is where I guess follow-ups as well come into it, that you would generally then do a good job of keeping in touch with somebody who you know has a problem but isn't quite ready yet to commit to the solution, but you know that they do want to at some point. Keeping in touch enough but not too much, so that you're keeping yourself fresh in their mind, and then you've done a good enough job at the outset of displaying how you can help, then chances are then you're in with a very good chance of securing that sale or that work at a future date.
Yeah, so you mentioned following up, and for me, following up is key in what I do. How would you sort of set a strategy, a following up strategy? What's the key to following up?
Well, I think the first thing is that when you're speaking to somebody and when you're doing a sales pitch, whether it's a blatant sales pitch or it's just a conversation with somebody, but I guess if you're speaking to somebody about what you do, and you're speaking to somebody who you know may need what you do, it's likely that there's some selling going on, even if it is quite subtle. So what you want to do is, I find, is that you always want to kind of end that conversation or that phone call with a next step, so that there's a next step. So the next step then allows you to follow up, because you've already told them at that point in time that this is what's going to happen next, and you've already got their approval for that. So it might be that you say, well, shall we touch base in 2 weeks? Or shall I send you through a list of my prices? Shall I send you through a list of my whatever that might be, that there's something that you have agreed and you've bought in, you've got their engagement in the fact that this is not the end, that this is just the start. And subtle, something that is not pushy, but then it allows you then to do the follow-up, and then it allows you to follow up to the follow-up, which is more important, because sometimes the follow-up is ignored, not intentionally, but because again it lands at a time when the person isn't quite ready or they miss it. But the fact that you agreed to have a first follow-up, you then kind of expect that you're going to get some acknowledgement to your follow-up. So when you don't get an acknowledgement to your follow-up, it gives you permission, in my mind, to follow up again, because you're following up for a reply to your previous follow-up.
Yeah, and it's great how you described it then, because it put an image in my head of the prospect or the customer being nurtured along the way. You just gently nudge them towards the outcome that they want, but they might not necessarily know that they needed at that moment in time. And by just gently getting their permission to speak to them again, you're bringing their guard down, and your following up isn't a surprise to them. Would that be correct in assuming?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people aren't, particularly if you're doing sort of outreach to people and you're contacting people to tell them about your services. They haven't contacted you to ask you about them. You've contacted them, and they've been willing to listen to you and give you some time. So chances are they aren't ready to buy just yet, but they are interested, because they wouldn't have agreed to speak to you if something didn't pique their interest in what you mentioned to them in your initial outreach, or what you posted on social media, whatever that might be. Something piqued their interest to warrant them giving you their time. So you know that there's an interest in what you're talking about or what you're offering. The question is when is the right time, or when will they need that? And the chances are it's probably not now. So you're building that relationship, and then the nurture bit, as you say, comes in after that, because what you want to do then is you want to keep them reminded of you and keep you fresh in their mind, so that when the time does come that they're ready to make a decision, that they remember you and they go, oh, I must go back and speak to that person, because that sounded really interesting, or the way they help people sounded really interesting, and I'm now ready for some help. So let me go back and actually now I'm going to go and ask them, will you speak to me, please, because I want your help.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I've had a situation recently where I haven't followed up as well as what I could have done, and essentially what I did, I warmed up the lead for somebody else to take, because I hadn't done my job properly. They then realised, oh crikey, I need to do something about this. I found somebody else. Only then following up afterwards, after they'd done the deal with somebody else, I then found out they'd done it. So following up at regular intervals and keeping fresh in people's mind is so important.
It's key, and sometimes as well, it's about I guess it's about having a good process as well. So we talked about process before, having like a good sales process and having a follow-up. And if somebody is not necessarily ready right now, in the conversation you're speaking to them about, when typically, how often, depends what you're doing, depends what you're selling, of course, and sort of how often a person might need it. But in an instance where you're offering something that somebody doesn't necessarily need all of the time, or maybe they do need your service, but they've just already placed it with somebody else, then you're sort of getting an understanding from them in the call or in the conversation about how often do they typically use a service like yours, when might the next time be coming up if they're on a project right now, when is that project concluding, so that then as well that there's no point in. So you want to get some time frames around, some information from them on time frames in your conversation, so that as well then when the right time to follow up is, because there's no point you following up every fortnight if the next time they will need you is on their next project, which won't be for 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what you say about gathering information, that's what sales is, isn't it? It's an information gathering exercise, and then finding out how your solution best fits with them.
Correct. I mean, when I used to I did all the selling for the surveying practice when I had that, before I sold that. And I used to get right down to the detail of when I'd be speaking to a prospect about, okay, so you don't have any work right now. What projects are you working on? What projects are coming up in the pipeline? Because we used to get a lot of work referred to us, to our surveying practice from architects. So part of that conversation would be to the architect, okay, so there's nothing on right now. You've placed all the specialist services that we provide. What projects are you tendering at? Are you tendering any interesting projects at the moment yourself? Are you doing any fee quotes for interesting projects yourself? Oh, that sounds like a nice one. You know, have you won any? And then you get some addresses, and now you can follow up then in a month's time and go, okay, well, you said you were probably going to hear about this project in a month. Let's say Sloane Square, for example, and then you follow up in a month and go, how's the Sloane Square project going? Did you win that one? Is there any chance we could do you a fee quote for our bit? So you've got information there, not only on timeframes, but projects, addresses, that then just kind of starts to make things a bit more real in the conversation as well.
Yeah, so on top of that information gathering, I've found that people tend to buy something to either alleviate a pain or to gain a pleasure. How would you understand what the client wants, and how would you, as a salesperson, capitalise on that?
Well, I guess my approach used to be in selling was understanding what they're unhappy with at the moment, and what I guess the problems. So what are their problems? What are you unhappy with? What are you unhappy with in the area of work that we provide? Not us doing the work, but when you're on a project, what bits of the service that other people provide to you are you not so happy with? What bits don't fit in with you and how you work as a practice? What do you find problematic? What does your client find problematic? What does your client not like? And then understanding then where your service might differ, so that you can say, but it has to be genuine. You can't just make it up. You can't just find it out and make it up. You have to genuinely have some difference that you can add in these areas. And part of it as well is understanding how I guess, well, for us in our surveying world, part of it was understanding how your competitors worked, and how the type of service that they offered, and the type of things that people would generally want to expect, and where they would probably be falling down in the service that they offered. And more often than not, it's very simple stuff. It's not the technical bit, because surveyors are qualified, highly qualified technical people, so they have a lot of technical knowledge built in. But actually the bits that differ, and the bits that I understood that differ, and I kind of honed in on this, were, well, actually how you deliver that information is key. How you follow up, how you deal with the client, because they couldn't really care about the technical stuff, because they rely upon you to get that right. That's a given. It's a given that you know your expertise and you can do that. They're paying you to do that. What makes a difference is all the other stuff that goes around how you communicate with them, how you keep them updated, how you tell it to them very simply, because they are technical people. They employ you for your expertise. They want to know that what you're doing is going well. They want to know that you're fitting in well with the rest of the project team, and that you're working well, and that if your job is project managing, that you're project managing everybody else well. So it's about understanding, what do they want to hear, when do they want to hear it, and how do they want to hear it and see it, and then getting that bit right. And then largely you're just left to do your own bit of work, and then they will talk about you all day long, because actually you're making their life easier, because you're making their life easier by giving them what they want, how they want it. And that's not unique to everybody. You're not redesigning the wheel for every person. And this is what I found interesting about what most people get wrong, is the actual, what I found to be the easy bits. Well, how do I make this simple for somebody else to understand? And what bits do I know that they want to hear and don't need to hear? And I only give them the bits that they want to hear. And that's usually the same for everybody. And once you can do it that way, then people build an image and a perception and a knowledge of working with you, that it's really easy and you make my life easy. The projects go well. If they're not going well, I understand why. You make it very easy for me to understand what my options are, and that's it. So making the problems go away.
Yeah, and like you said, keep it simple. They don't want to know the details. They want their outcome and to be spoken to in a language that they understand. I think that's crucial. Like you've touched on that, it's amazing. Yeah, and you must have been told no 1,000 times when you're trying to put a proposal together, sell your services to someone. So how does someone keep going after getting no after no after no?
More than 1,000 times, Sam, after 22 years. Um, how do you keep going? No just means you're moving on to the next opportunity. So I never saw no, and there's different types of no. There's sometimes there's no way ever. Sometimes there's no not yet. So I think you have to understand what type of no it is. Is it a no because we're not going to work together because we have a personality clash? Is it a no because I don't need your services yet, but I would use you in the future? So you've got to understand those kind of things. And if it's a no where it's definitely a no because let's say, for example, a person or a client has a preferred supplier, and it could be a family member, for example, or it could be a friend, a family friend, who you know that they will always use. It's actually better for you to know up front and for you to know very early on that there's no work. And I think in getting a no, it's understanding and getting feedback as well as to why it's a no. What is it about it that makes it a no for you? And more often than not, you'll find out that there is some other reason. Is that it's not that they dislike you. It's not that they think that your service is bad. It's because there's some other reason that they want to use somebody else, or they're invested in somebody else already. And so knowing that then means that, okay, you understand that there's a reason why. There's nothing more you could have done to win that job because it was never there to be won in the first place. So it's understanding that and then just moving on quickly. But it's very important to understand why it's a no. In my opinion, understand why it's a no, and then to move on quickly, because I always appreciated a no, because that means then that I'm not wasting my time. I don't want to be wasting my time on a prospect that's going to go nowhere. So if it's a no, we want to get to a no as quickly as possible. And that's, I think, a thing as well that people don't do well enough, is that they allow too many leads to be drifting around all of the time without actually driving them to a conclusion. And I don't mean driving them to a conclusion in, an overpowering way, but in a good communicative way, by having good consistent follow-ups to get to a no. Because what you want to do is you want to get to a no as soon as possible, so you don't waste unnecessary time in the future following up, sending more information, doing whatever it might be that you think you need to do because you haven't asked the right questions to establish that it's a no. Because a lot of the time, people are afraid to say no. They don't like giving bad news. They don't like telling you they're not going to use you. So they'd rather just ignore you. They'd rather say not yet, maybe. And it's your job as a salesperson. I think a good salesperson is able to get behind all of that and find out if it's ever going to be a yes.
Yeah, and what would your thought be on just straight up asking them? Like, we've had a few phone calls, conversations, something hasn't quite happened yet. Are you ever going to use my service? For wanting to present it a better way than that, but would you just straight up ask somebody quite clearly, are you going to use me?
Yeah, I would. I have no problem in having those conversations and asking those questions, because I can do it without feeling awkward. And I think that's the thing. Some people, and this is where some people find themselves in sales, but they aren't really very comfortable in sales. I think in sales you've got to be comfortable with a no. You've got to be comfortable with a rejection. And I'm quite happy asking people, and I will ask people directly, are you going to do this or are you not? In a softer way, but effectively that's what I'm doing. I'm asking that. I'm getting to that question, and I'm allowing them. I guess by being a good communicator, I'm giving them the platform for them to be able to say no. I'm allowing them. I'm helping them to get to that no by giving them, I guess, some entry to that, and if needs be, then just giving them that direct question. and saying, well, look, it's not a problem. If it's not a problem, if you've got somebody else, that's fine. It's just good for me to know now, so that I don't keep bothering you. So it's about you. I don't keep bothering you going forward, because I don't want to be wasting your time. I don't want to be wasting my time. I don't want to be wasting your time. So therefore, it's just better if we can be upfront now, and I can be aware of, what works, what doesn't work, or if it's going to work at all. And then that way we can draw a line under it, and you know where I am if anything ever changes in the future, but I won't bother you unnecessarily. So it's kind of doing things like that to draw them out in a nice way.
Yeah, it's giving them that avenue out without them feeling like they're doing something uncomfortable. You're allowing them the space in order to say no.
Yes.
Yeah. So sales, I think a lot of people find themselves in sales without necessarily choosing it as a career. And I think being really tip-top in sales, it's a profession in itself, and it should be viewed on as a real high-end quality position, not something that you just wind up in. But if somebody does wind up in sales, how can they overcome the initial nerves and the trepidation of reaching out to people to offer a product or service?
I guess if it's well, it's kind of difficult, because if they aren't naturally able to have conversations which quite often involve you having to ask and be quite direct, then perhaps they're in the wrong function to start with. But if it's something that they probably can do, or maybe could get better at, a way to get better at it is to be very clear as to what your intentions are. So, and we talked about previously about having a procedure, or having a system. So, for example, you might have a set script, not that you read off a page, but you would have a set number of things that you want to identify in that phone call, so that you can speak naturally, but you have 2 or 3 points that at the end of that phone call you want to have covered all these things, so that then at least you can come away at the end of that call knowing that you've got answers to some things, which allow you to then understand if there's a further follow-up call or a further follow-up email required. So I think it's about being clear about what you're trying to get out of the call, being clear on what you offer, and what your offer is, and your pricing, and being clear on how you help people, and then understanding how you want to direct the conversation. So a bit of practice for I guess individuals, a bit of practice beforehand, and then having those sort of notes to help you along the way, so you can kind of quickly see what you're missing during that conversation. Because you can't really have a script, because depending upon what answer you get back, or depending upon the response you get, and I think you have to be quite dynamic as a person, and that's why I guess sales is quite difficult, because sometimes you'll be met with immediate objection, and you need to be eloquently able to bring the conversation back around to something a bit more positive, or to start to tease out of people something that they don't want to give you at the start, but that they probably have an issue with.
Yeah, and the way you said to have a script, but only sort of key points on it, not a whole script that people read, because I get phone calls from telemarketers and you can tell they're reading off a script, and it's so unnatural. And knowing the information that you need to get out of the call, but have your personality and your conversational skills come out, is so important, and it definitely helps if you're trying to sell stuff.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to say, Sam, as well, is that it's not about you doing all the talking. You're asking the questions. So you're asking questions of the person. So you need to have a couple of very key targeted questions for that person that can just get them opening up and talking. And what you want to do is you want to get them talking, and you want them largely to be doing most of the talking. So you have a couple of questions, and it's really about them. It's about finding out about them. It's not about you. And if you can make it more about them, make it more about getting them talking about their problems, get them talking about what isn't working, what they would like to be working better, all that kind of stuff, teasing that out of them. The more you get them talking, the more openings then you have to start to introduce bits that you want to introduce about what you do.
Fantastic. So they do the talking, we do the problem solving.
Exactly.
So just to finish off, one final question. If you could give one tip on how to be an absolute sales superstar, what would it be?
One tip. Okay, that's quite a difficult one in a way. But one tip I would say is to be very clear on how you help. Be very clear. Have identified the pain points of your client clearly, and understand them, so that then you can ask the right question on the call to start with. When you get them speaking, you can ask the right question, and then you can have your answer ready as to how you solve that problem. Because if you know the problem that they generally experience, and it's a generalistic thing, most people will experience the same issues because you're targeting a certain type of person with what you're selling. Most people will have similar issues and problems. You need a question that gets them talking about that problem. Once you hear them talking about that problem, you are clear on what your solution is, and then the rest goes from there.
Fantastic stuff. Amazing nuggets of information again. So thanks a lot, Michael. And if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you? What are your social media links?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Michael McQuade, and you can also, I've got a website which there's some information on there about what I do and the mentoring work that I do with businesses and property people, and that is www.michaelmcquaid, so my name.co.uk.
Amazing. And I'm sure people will check you out. I would highly recommend that they do.
Yeah, great. Lovely. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.